Welcome to another edition of Inside Guyana. Today ITV's camera crew is in the office of the Prime Minister of Guyana, the Honorable Mr. Moses Virasamy Nagamootoo. We are very happy that he took time off from his busy schedule to meet with us. So, ladies and gentlemen, viewers of ITV, please join me in welcoming to our program Inside Guyana the Prime Minister for the first time in the office of the Prime Minister, the one and only, as I normally would say, Moses Virasamy Nagamootoo. Sir, welcome to the program and thank you for having us, sir.
Welcome to my office.
And this is Mr. Jonathan Sobrian, who is assisting me today to conduct this interview here in the office of the Prime Minister of Guyana.
Well, that doesn't look like an even game, right? 2 against 1.
Well, I think, Prime Minister, I know your ability. You have taken on the whole country and the whole PPP. So, much as 2 against 1, you've taken on 5 of them were fighting you, and you became victorious. So, I think that's no feat for a man of your caliber.
Thank you.
Well, we are here and we want to say again that we are happy to know that you're today Prime Minister of Guyana. You have been leading the changes in a very dynamic way. Since I know you all my life, there are many instances you wouldn't know about, but I have them in my heart about you. And you're a very admirable politician and human being. And regardless of what people say, and sometimes I disagree with some of the approaches that you have, but generally, you're a man of really high regard and respect, and you deserve that by your actions. Our first observation arriving in Guyana is that people have, on the plane, people have been asking questions. Oh, where are you going to Guyana? They're going to kill you. I said, how is that? You know, the security situation is getting worse. But I want to tell you the truth, we have been here for more than a week now, and we haven't encountered any kind of a security problems, except when we went to the jungle the other day. We saw some tigers, some tigers were bigger, and we had to turn back. So the only danger I saw so far is in the jungle. So Prime Minister, can you please tell our viewers a little bit about the security situation? How are we handling that here now?
You started on the right foot and you were in the interior and you saw what appears to be footprints of a tiger, the paws of a tiger, or a jaguar. As you know, the jaguar is our national mascot.
Yes.
And you could hear the jaguar roar about 50th anniversary of our independence, our golden jubilee. And jaguar and tigers in Guyana, they are endangered species. So, in a sense, we protect them, and as part of the patrimony of the world. And if they pose a threat to you, coming here, it is not that an offensive threat. It is because you chose to go where the jaguar is. So people coming to Guyana, if they chose to move where their lives could be compromised and their safety, then harm could come to them. But I'm happy that you are alive and well and that you didn't encounter some problems. Listen, the crime wave isn't new and peculiar to Guyana. It's probably easier said that you have more crimes perhaps right in Richmond Hill, in the Queens area, in one day that we would probably experience in a year incidents of various types of crimes. But we inherited a situation of 40% of our people under the poverty line. No one seems to know the unemployment statistics. It had been in many years on the Jack Dale and more recently Raptor. It had been a state secret. So we don't know how many young people are unemployed. And in that kind of milieu of poverty and joblessness, you would expect that the crime wave would be what it had been in the last 10 years. Let's take, for example, in the first decade of the 21st century, Guyana witnessed between 2000 and 2010 more killings than you ever had in any time in the history of Guyana. There was the killing fields, and Guyana posed to the world the image of a dangerous place. And therefore, we are looking at that background, and we are now looking at what has happened in the last 9 months, that it was impossible almost to be able to erase the footprints of criminal activities. We are vulnerable to narco crimes, we are vulnerable to economic crimes, piracy, and the crimes in the mining areas, human trafficking, the interplay of guns in the society from our porous borders. And also we have now a kind of social crimes. Suicide is a crime, of people in depression and frustrated with things that they cannot handle or resolve by themselves, resort to crime. So yes, we have episodes of criminal activities in Guyana, but I don't think that it is of such a level that people should be discouraged from coming here. And also, I don't like to deal with any idle boast. To tell you that the statistics are showing that right now we have less crime than we had last year at the same time. We have more interception of criminal gangs, more prosecution of criminals, and so there is a tendency for people in the crime fighting arena to say that they are on top of crime. But I'm not the one to say we should boast about it. We are still a far way to making our communities safe. We are still a far way in to be able to bring on board the community police and members of the community to help and to become part of the security force, not to be an adjunct, not to be some sidekick, but we want genuine community policing to be part of this national security environment.
So they're establishing the People's Militia.
Because we want the militia to be a reserve, that you could be recruited into the army and you could be placed in the People's Militia as a kind of reserve, so that if you have national disaster, you could call in the reserves, you could call in the People's Militia, because they are people within communities. They know the communities and they could help to bring relief and help and support in times of disaster. It's not People's Militia is creating a fighting force to go to the border and wage war or something like that. It is a social type of body that will interact with the communities and the security forces to protect our societies and to be able to help.
And recently the DEA has set up an office in Guyana. Is that something that is going to contribute towards the reduction of crime in Guyana?
Well, you know, you have different types of crimes. You have like life, you have from a private to commander, field marshal. You have different levels. Criminal activities are defined by the nature of the relationship between the person perpetrating the crime and the victim of the crime. The ordinary kick down the door bandit or the choke and robber, the victim is invariably the person on the street or in the shop or somewhere. But the white collar criminal, steals against the state, steals against all the people at one time. And therefore, there are some white collar criminal activities like money laundering. People don't feel it every day, but you look at money laundering and narco trade, drugs trade, you begin to see that the people who are bringing in large sums of US money, whether it's from drugs or other illegal activity, they are able to infiltrate the society and distort legal, commercial, business activity. And therefore you are seeing white-collar crimes like money laundering and trafficking in monies, derived dirty monies from narco-trafficking, hurting legitimate business. And so you need a trained agency that has experience that could help our local agencies to deal with the white-collar crime. And these are the new elements that have been brought in, how to be able to have EA, security forces from Canada and from Great Britain to work with our people to share their experience in combating the white-collar crime that is distorting our economic life and at the same time tend to compromise even the police, even the judiciary, the law enforcement agencies, because the narco criminals and the money launderers, they have very deep pockets, and they can corrupt your legal system.
Prime Minister, since we are on the topic of crime, we know, and I've been around for a good while in the campaign of the coalition in the last elections, and one of the topical issues, anti-corruption. Now that the coalition government is in place, and it's more than 9 months, you haven't seen many or any of these white-collar criminals placed in jail, and people in the diaspora especially have been asking, maybe this was just a ploy to win the elections. They accused the PPP government of corruption, and Jack Day was saying publicly, bring the evidence, lock them up, take us to the court, jail them. His words. And so far we haven't seen any of these white-collar criminals who have robbed all the people together, apparently, from what we've been hearing about forensic audit. They formed the SACU and they have the SARU and all these commissions there inquiring, and people are asking questions now. When, or maybe this is a lie that the people said that they're corrupt, or lock them up, or you're going to be accomplices, or being called accomplices to these white-collar crimes if you don't lock them up.
Yeah, you're correct in some ways that people want quick action. We grew up seeing the circus in Roman times when the gladiators would fight. And you will hear the shout of the people with the fingers down or up. He lives, he dies. Right. And they sometimes would have greater fun if the person is thrown to a lion to be devoured if you lost the battle. So people have an appetite for action. And in that context, having had credible sources and agencies reporting on pervasive corruption in Guyana, at least over the last 12 years, that they would wish to see the corrupt persons being brought to justice. However, you're dealing with also the long arms of corrupt influences on the very body that is supposed to investigate corruption. If you have a situation where you erect a fence to protect your crops, and you get up in the morning and you see all your crops disappear and you couldn't find a trace of the thief, I would suspect that the fence had the crop. So I will have to get a new fence. So we have to put in place new investigative units. That's why today words like SOKU, NANA are new agencies putting into operation, special organization units dealing with criminal investigation, doing the investigation. It's a very painstaking job. When we got in here, we were busy trying to find files, vehicles, assets of the government. Most of the ministries, they have been stripped. Some turned into like junkyards. And so the State Asset Recovery Agency that was set up was to be able to go after the missing assets. Some of them had been brought in voluntarily, others have not been. So you're putting together the case that will have to be foolproof for prosecution, not for prosecution's sake that you go to court and you are discharged, and then the same people who would say that people were corrupt, they turn back and say, you see, the man got charged or the woman got charged, but the court didn't find nothing, that it was a mischief that was concocted. So you need to have full proof, the evidence gathered to present to trial. We know of a case of a former minister of the government that had been charged with an offense. I can't comment on it in terms of missing vehicles, and in another case, the misappropriation of over $600 million. And so that is in the court. We also know of ongoing investigation in relation to others. The DEA officer, one of the persons who they are saying that they are doing simultaneous investigation in over 260 possible episodes of white-collar crimes. And so now you have the other dimension of people involved, suspected of being involved in money laundering and drugs. When the SOCO unit would search their homes in legitimate execution of a duty, we are now hearing a howl from sections, including the opposition, that we are now doing search and bust and all of these things, and that we are invading people's rights. And you went there, in some cases they seized 10, 15, 20 million dollars in money, most of it in foreign currencies in people's homes, and catch of drugs, catch of arms, so that you're now in the beginning stage of taking the fight not to the small fish, you're taking it to the big sharks. And some elements of the society would complain that you're violating rights, you have surveillance. We didn't put into train the SOCO. It was under the PPP, under Mr. Clement Rogie, that SOCO came into being. It was under the PPP, under Clement Rogie, that we had the SWAT, a special unit to fight, a special tactical unit to fight crimes involving arms. And so we are implementing, nothing had happened in the past, we are now implementing those procedures that would effectively bring to the courts cases that you could succeed and you could nail it down. So this is drill down time, and it will take more than 9 months.
How long more do you think we might have before we see some of these guys or perpetrators of white-collar crime going to jail?
Well, listen,
prosecuted.
This is a legal function. It all depends on how strong your case is and if you're to have any success at all. Look, for example, I said just now, and I was complimenting the CID chief. I just met him at a police officers conference, and I told him that, you know, what pleases me most is that for the very first time that I could remember that you have such a large turnover of interception, arrests and prosecution is now. Yes, you have criminal activities, but every episode of crime you find there's an arrest. People who burned a woman in her house in Bath and killed 2 persons in Bushlod. Immediately almost they were arrested and they are charged with capital offenses. So that you have now a greater impetus, a greater guide to the police force as to what their duties should be. No more someone should be picking up a phone and calling a police officer and say, don't go there. No more should you be exempt from interception or prosecution, so that you don't have under the law any sacred cows. So that you would expect that action could be taken. Let's take, for example, the Cromwell Wing shooting. Here was a man who was using his rights as a citizen to protest in the street. One man felt that the former Attorney General had said certain things that constitute a threat to citizen, or at least the indication of terrorist criminal activities against citizens and journalists. And he decided he was going to protest outside this former Attorney General's office. And what happened? He was killed the same night. And the last time I saw him in March, I think 12th of March, outside of my office, the night he was killed. Now, that was last year. People felt it was a cold case. Nobody wanted to provide a lead. Eventually, some persons were dragged in, and we are having some progress in the investigation. 9 years ago, maybe, a journalist, a columnist, a defiant, independent, bold, courageous journalist named Fred Kissoon, a commentator, a lecturer from the University of Guyana, someone threw feces in his face, a bucket of it, because he was writing things that were considered to be outrageous to the then administration. It took some time, but some arrests were made. Charges have been laid, and we know that the persons against whom the charges were laid were leaders, people in the leadership, one at least, of the PPP, and I mean the Jagdeo Ramatar PPP, not the Chedijagan PPP. Chedijagan PPP don't throw
those activities.
Show those type of things on people's faces, and they don't throw. Chedi don't throw the S thing on people's character. But this was a particular grouping that believe in sleaze and cuss down and dirt and nastiness, and they show their nastiness towards someone,
both literally and
figuratively. But there are people in the court. So that, yes, it is said that justice delayed is justice denied. But in this case, justice might have been delayed to the victims, but it is surely, as the morning follows the night, it is now possible that with good police work and not political interference, that you can have prosecution, people brought to justice. Probably late, but better than late than never.
I'm glad you brought up a point, because I spoke to a couple of people last week after the story broke in the newspaper about the arrest for those that very heinous activity concerning Freddy Kissoon. And people were starting to believe that the force itself, the Guyana police force, is actually doing something worthwhile. That they are now doing things that were either politically unmotivated to do by the previous administration, or they feel that there's a sense of a duty now, and they're filled with more pride. And they felt that accountability is also important. It's highlighted in the police force now. Do you feel that way, Mr. Prime Minister, sir?
I'll just share with you what was told to me when on Republic Day we unfurled the biggest flag ever, maybe in the Caribbean, the highest flagpole. That there were people who were crying just seeing the golden arrowhead flying. People were emotional. They sent me video, if you look at in social media, that for them it was part of their heart lifting in a glorious symbol. It must have an influence on the security forces. They salute that flag. They take an oath to do what the laws tell them to do. But unfortunately in the past, many good people in uniform were either alienated, destroyed, or compromised. They are now coming out, and they are proud of their uniforms. They are now coming out, and they are proud of the national flag and the national pledge and the national anthem. So that we now know that there are many people in the security forces who could have done better, but were not allowed to do the work because too many people had guns and too many people had power. There was a second command. Could you imagine the police making an arrest of some ruffians who had a bag of guns, sophisticated AK-47
Wow.
and Uzis, and they took them to a police station. And here is a man, a drug lord, walking in the station and said, "These are my men, let them go." And the police all shake and let them go immediately. And you see Guyana, an elder statesman in our country, he filed an action against the police. He filed a private action against the drug lord who went into the police station. And later on, what was the explanation? That the drug lord was helping to keep law and order on behalf of the government of Guyana. That can't happen today. It could have happened then, where legitimate police action was interrupted and set aside because there were other actors and other players who had vested interests in their own security and their own business than the people's business and the people's security. So yes, Mr. O'Brien, the issue right now is that if you unfetter the police force and you allow them to do their work as they're trained to do, you're going to have a better security environment. And so I think that more and more people are becoming nationally conscious, and they are aroused by sense of patriotism and the love of duty, and we're initially now trying to change the culture of public service. And in that milieu, we are going to be able to have the better delivery of services, protection that traditionally should have been done without any interference from politicians.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. It's a pleasure having you on the program Inside Guyana. And on behalf of our camera crew, led by Tony, Jadoopat, and Mr. Jonathan Sobryan, we want to say thank you very much for having us here. It's a pleasure. This is Dr. Rudy Jadoopat reporting live and direct from the office of the Prime Minister of Guyana.